It turns out that $500 million is not a number that represents happiness, but the outcome of a lifelong escape from the tragedy of poverty and rejection. We are talking about Barbra Streisand, a woman known to the world as a living legend, armed with a prestigious EGOT collection and near absolute power in Hollywood. But behind the doors of the Malibu mansion, there is no sound of fulfilled laughter, only long nights where Barbra confronts the haunting image of an ugly face shaped by the scornful words of her own mother. Days spent standing at the peak of endless glory while constantly fearing being forgotten, and a loneliness so profound that she once spent a fortune simply to clone a beloved pet, so that in the end, her legacy now seems to be tied mainly to political controversies and the anxieties surrounding illness in old age. What will her family receive beyond the cold numbers written on a will? Join us as we decode the untold hidden corners of Barbra Streisand's life. And before we begin, do not forget to leave a heart to honor the difficult years she endured. Every kingdom has a beginning. And for Barbra Streisand, that kingdom did not begin in silk and velvet, but took shape in a heart-rending tragedy when she was still a child who had barely learned to speak. In 1943, amid the impoverished streets of Brooklyn, a shadow fell over the Streisand family when Barbra was only 15 months old. This was not the death of a distant stranger, but the sudden passing of Emanuel Streisand, a father and a devoted schoolteacher, taken away by complications from an epileptic seizure. That death did not merely remove the family's main support, it also tore out the roots of happiness from a child who had not even had the chance to fully call her father by name. A home that had once been warm abruptly sank into hardship and deprivation of every kind, and the hunger for material survival was still less terrifying than the hunger for affection. Her mother, Diana, a woman shattered by the loss of her husband and by a life of poverty, struggled to survive on a school secretary's salary to raise 2 children, and in doing so unintentionally built an icy wall between herself and her own daughter. During long nights in their cramped apartment, little Barbra often felt a profound loneliness, an aching desire to be held by her mother and told that everything would be all right. What came back instead was silence, or the weary sighs of an exhausted adult. "I remember always feeling like an abandoned child," Barbra once wrote in her memoir, her voice trembling as she recalled those days. To soothe that pain and emptiness, Barbra instinctively turned to music as a means of survival. There is an image, both beautiful and sorrowful, that former neighbors would later recall again and again, a thin little girl with wide eyes standing alone and singing in the empty hallways of a Brooklyn apartment building. Her voice echoed off the worn walls, lingering like a plea to be heard. At that time, her singing was not a search for fame. It was a way to comfort herself, to fill the void left by her late father. She once said, "When I sing, I no longer feel like an orphan." Even so, that brief sense of peace did not last long. In 1950, when she was 8 years old, her mother remarried Louis Kind, a used car salesman. This marriage brought the birth of her younger sister Rosalind, but instead of peace, it introduced more tension. Mr. Kind was not a warm stepfather. He was often distant and dismissive toward Barbra, making the family atmosphere increasingly suffocating and reinforcing her belief that she was an excess presence in her own home. Barbra's childhood tragedy did not end with a lack of affection. It was compounded by humiliation delivered by her own mother. In the eyes of Diana, who had once been a soprano forced to abandon her dreams by life's hardships, Barbra was never good enough, never beautiful enough to become a star. She often called her daughter Miskite, a Yiddish word meaning ugly child. The constant criticism of her appearance, especially her nose, which did not conform to Hollywood standards, lodged itself deep in Barbra's psyche, creating overwhelming insecurity and pushing her into years of teenage depression. Barbra always felt like an outsider, someone who could never shine beneath the stage lights. There were days when Barbra locked herself in her room, staring into the mirror and asking how the woman who had carried her for 9 months could be so cruel. That insecurity lingered like a ghost, silently following her even when she later stood at the peak of glory. But within that poverty and rejection, the will of a genius began to take root. In 1955, at just 13 years old, she persuaded her mother to take her to a studio in Manhattan to record her first demo, and in a rare moment of empathy, Diana agreed. This became a turning point. The moment her voice was preserved on vinyl for the first time, clear, soaring, and powerful amid the many storms of her life. Only 2 years later, Barbra won a talent contest at a local club, opening the door to the world of performance. By 1959, after graduating with honors from Erasmus Hall High School, Barbra made a decision that stunned everyone, including her mother. She refused college in order to pursue the risky path of an artistic career. She did not want to become a secretary or a stable teacher as her mother had hoped. She wanted to prove to the world, and especially to Diana, that the so-called ugly child could make the entire world bow its head. A real opportunity arrived in 1960 when Barbra began performing at nightclubs such as the Lion and the Bonsoir. With an initial salary of only $125 a week, she began her escape from poverty through her gifted voice. Late-night performances amid cigarette smoke and clinking glasses allowed her to save a few $1,000s, enough to move to Manhattan and live independently. Still, behind that money was a painful price. Facing unfamiliar crowds while carrying deep insecurity left Barbra in a constant state of panic. Each time she stepped toward the wings, her heart raced and cold sweat broke out, haunted by the fear that judging eyes would once again fixate on her appearance, just as her mother's had. Isolation and the pressure to succeed at all costs in order to escape poverty stretched her nerves to the breaking point. That complicated mother-daughter relationship became the most painful core of Barbra's life. Her mother never truly praised her. And even when Barbra began earning money, Diana continued to doubt her abilities. The absence of praise hardened into an iron motivation, while remaining an open wound at the same time. Barbra threw herself into work with near fanatical intensity, as if every paycheck and every round of applause were pieces used to patch a damaged sense of self. She later shared bitterly in an interview, "My mother never hugged me. She never told me she loved me. Maybe that's why I had to go looking for love from millions of strangers." As we close this chapter of childhood and first steps into the world, we see a Barbra Streisand who rose not only from the mud of poverty, but also from the ruins of a rejected soul. She turned tears into fuel and insecurity into resolve, laying the foundation for the immense legacy that would follow. But that first taste of success also awakened new tragedies, because the Broadway spotlight of 1962 did more than illuminate a new talent. It began to burn away the last remnants of privacy belonging to a young girl from Brooklyn. Barbra stepped into the role of Miss Marmelstein in I Can Get It For You Wholesale with all the defiance of someone who felt she had nothing left to lose. And the result was a prestigious Tony Award nomination when she was still in her early 20s. That was the moment the world realized that the so-called unconventional appearance carried a form of absolute power, her voice. A contract with Columbia Records was signed soon afterward, and just 1 year later, her debut album, the Barbra Streisand Album, swept the charts, earning her the coveted Grammy Award for Album of the Year. Those recordings sold millions of copies. Her distinctive voice, powerful, emotionally charged, and at times trembling, spreading everywhere, turning a small girl into a musical phenomenon. Money began to pour in, fame began to travel far and wide, but few people knew that right in the middle of those most radiant days, Barbra was struggling inside a turbulent marriage with Elliot Gould. They married in 1963, when both were young and full of fire, only a few months after meeting. As the pressure of growing fame intensified, it gradually pushed them apart. Elliot, a talented actor, slowly felt overshadowed by his wife's success. He once said that being married to Barbra felt like a lava bath, sweet and painful at the same time. Barbra, on the other hand, was so consumed by work that she neglected the nurturing of the relationship. Amid all that upheaval, Barbra's career continued to surge forward like an arrow with no stopping point, especially with the milestone of Funny Girl in 1968. With a fee of $200,000, an enormous sum at the time, and an Academy Award for Best Actress, Barbra officially entered the ranks of the most powerful A-list stars on the planet. This was followed by Hello, Dolly in 1969, with a record-breaking salary of $750,000, pushing her net worth to around $1 to $2 million as the 1960s came to a close. That money did more than buy houses and cars. It brought a sense of safety she had never known as a child. I made it, she once thought to herself, money, fame, and recognition. But beneath the glamorous costumes and endless applause, her heart was fracturing. The birth of her son, Jason Gould, in 1966 was not enough to mend the cracks with Elliot. As pressure from the public and expectations she placed on herself kept rising, the distance between husband and wife grew wider. They separated in 1969 and officially divorced in 1971. "We didn't grow together," Elliot later reflected, "and the reason is that she became more important than us." For Barbra, the pain cut even deeper. She felt guilty for letting her career overshadow her family, for not being there for her son more often. Jason grew up amid separation, and Barbra sank into a deeper depression, spending long, lonely nights at home, asking herself whether success was truly worth such a cost. Alongside the pain of marriage, another dark shadow began to take over her mind: crippling stage fright. Few could imagine that a star so confident in front of the camera could tremble to the point of being unable to step out before a live audience. The roots of this tragedy traced back to the set of Funny Girl, where her co-star, Sidney Chaplin, who had once harbored feelings for Barbra and was rejected, responded with acts of sabotage on stage. Changing lines, deliberately making her forget her cues, frequently delivering harsh words and criticism, leaving Barbra living in a constant state of fear. The symptoms became so severe that she had to take medication to control her stomach and eventually turned to psychological therapy that would last for decades. This was not simple nervousness, but a form of mental torment that forced her to withdraw from the spotlight time and again in order to search for peace within herself. Even the old trauma surrounding her father's sudden death began to resurface. Barbra realized that her family had a history of heart disease, and the fear of being struck down by an unexpected heart attack lingered constantly in her thoughts. This awareness later drove her to establish the Women's Heart Alliance in 2014, aiming to raise awareness about heart disease in women, an organization focused on gender differences in diagnosis and treatment, because she recognized that women are often overlooked, with symptoms dismissed as emotional stress rather than real illness. "I was shocked to learn that more women die from heart disease than from cancer," she once said, her voice heavy with emotion. Looking back on this chapter, we see a painful paradox. The brighter the achievements, the higher the price that had to be paid. The millions of dollars sitting in the bank resembled a glossy coat of paint covering the deep cracks of a shattered marriage and a mind worn down by chronic fear. Money delivered financial freedom, but it could not purchase a cure for the sensitive, deeply wounded heart of the Brooklyn woman she once was. And as if following a law of fate, when she tried to move past these fractures to climb toward even greater heights of glory, new tragedies were already waiting, harsher and more merciless than ever. Entering the 1970s and 1980s, Barbra Streisand was no longer simply a star. She had become an institution, a symbol of power that Hollywood both admired and feared. This era was marked by A Star is Born in 1976, a project that generated more than $80 million worldwide. In it, she did not only act, but also produced, wrote lyrics, and composed the timeless ballad Evergreen, earning a salary and profit participation totaling up to $15 million at the time, along with an Academy Award for the song. Barbra proved that she was an unstoppable money-making force. Not limited to cinema, her legendary collaboration with Barry Gibb on the album Guilty in 1980 created a global earthquake, selling over 12 million copies and bringing in massive royalties estimated between $5 and $10 million. By the end of the 1970s, her fortune had already reached the range of $20 to $50 million. But Barbra's ambition stretched far beyond standing in front of the camera. She wanted to control it. The Project Yentl in 1983 stands as proof of her almost extreme perseverance. It took 15 relentless years of persuading investors before Barbra was finally able to direct, write the screenplay, and star in a Golden Globe-winning masterpiece. The film tells the story of a Jewish girl who disguises herself as a boy to study the Torah, a narrative that mirrored Barbra's own journey, a woman constantly fighting for recognition in a male-dominated industry. This success cemented her status as the Iron Woman of one of the harshest industries in the world. As the numbers in her bank account soared, the peace within her soul moved in the opposite direction with bitter precision. Every dollar earned seemed to add another brick to the wall, separating her from the outside world. Pressure from the media and the expectations of the public gradually drained Barbra. She withdrew from the spotlight for many years, choosing to stay home with her son Jason instead of continuing to chase enormous contracts. Wealth gave her the freedom to step back, and it also placed her at the center of unnecessary controversies. One of the most unusual incidents was the Streisand effect in 2003, when she sued a photographer to have an image of her home removed from the internet. The outcome was the complete opposite of what she intended, as the photo spread at lightning speed, turning her name into a psychological term describing the backlash caused by attempts to suppress information. After 27 years away from the stage, Barbra returned with the 1994 tour, generating $50 million in revenue. And the 2006-2007 tour was even more astonishing, earning $119.5 million from only 29 shows, an almost unbelievable figure. These were more than financial gains. They were proof that the power of her voice remained intact after decades, even as she stirred political controversy by openly criticizing President Bush during a concert at Madison Square Garden. She also invested wisely in real estate, transforming her Malibu property into a magnificent fortress valued at over $100 million, a place where she could create an entirely separate world for herself. She once said, "I don't want to be just an artist. I want to own what I create." With more than 150 million records sold, film paychecks from projects such as Meet the Fockers, and an art investment portfolio worth up to $20 million, Barbra built a formidable financial empire. But behind that immense fortune lies a profound impact on the people she loved most, with recent losses making the tears of the Streisand family heavier and more painful than ever before. As she enters the final chapter of her life, Barbra Streisand seems able to buy almost everything in this world except a ticket that could take her back in time to heal the relationships that were fractured long ago. In 2002, her mother Diana passed away, leaving behind a black hole of regret inside Barbra that could never be filled. An entire lifetime spent earning hundreds of millions of dollars, reaching peaks no other woman had touched, was, at its core, an attempt to trade all of that success for a single nod of acknowledgement from her mother. But until Diana's final breath, their relationship remained a collection of scattered, tense fragments. Barbra once shared that even after Diana had witnessed her daughter's extraordinary success, she still kept her distance. "I regret that we never had the chance to say everything that needed to be said," Barbra admitted during a rare moment of openness. Her mother's death was not only the loss of a parent, but the end of any hope for an apology or a complete, unconditional embrace. Before that pain could fully subside, another blow came in 2022, when Marilyn Bergman, her closest friend, longtime collaborator behind Immortal Melodies, and almost a spiritual mother, passed away at the age of 93 due to respiratory complications. That loss cut deeply, because Marilyn was not just a creative partner, but also the person who listened and comforted Barbra through her darkest periods. Amid those vast emotional voids, Her second marriage to actor James Brolin in 1998 felt like a late-arriving harbor of happiness, a warm light for a soul that had grown hardened over time. James, steady and gentle, became a reliable anchor, helping her through lonely nights. She treated James's son, Josh Brolin, as her own, and that expanded family bond gradually grew closer and more secure. With her biological son, Jason Gould, Barbra has also given unwavering support. Jason pursued acting and music, appeared in The Prince of Tides, directed by his mother, and even sang duets with her. Her vast wealth, from royalties to the Malibu estate, ensured Jason and his family a stable life without material worries. But that same wealth also carried an invisible pressure, causing care and concern to sometimes be misread as control. She once said, "Money can build a beautiful house, but it cannot automatically create a home." Her loneliness grew so profound that in 2018 she made a controversial decision, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to clone her beloved dog Samantha. This was not simply an eccentric act of the ultra-wealthy, but a cry for help from a soul so terrified of separation that it tried to use technology to hold on to what felt safest and most familiar. Even so, well into her 80s, Barbra's creative drive and earning power continued to command respect from younger generations. The 2016-2017 tour brought in $53 million. The 2018 album Walls carried a strong political voice, and most recently, the song Love Will Survive in 2024 stood as a declaration of the enduring vitality of a living legend. She has also directed tens of millions of dollars through the Streisand Foundation toward charitable causes, from environmental protection to education, women's health, and social issues. These contributions are not merely obligations. They are her way of giving back to life, compensating for what she once lacked. The enormous fortune built from music royalties, real estate investments, and priceless works of art continues to grow day by day, securing her family's stability for generations to come. But it is in the moments of losing close friends and loved ones that Barbra truly reflects on the emotional legacy she will leave behind. And as the sunset of her life slowly descends, the question of who will inherit not only her wealth, but also her pain, becomes more piercing than ever. By the year 2026, the name Barbra Streisand is no longer merely the proper noun of an artist. It has become an untouchable monument in humanity's temple of legends. With a complete collection of the most prestigious honors, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, known collectively as EGOT alongside the Presidential Medal of Freedom awarded in 2015, her status has long surpassed the boundaries of an entertainment star. As of now, her net worth is estimated to stand between $460 and $510 million US. This is an enormous figure, a fortune built from blood and bone, from countless sleepless nights, and from the most silent and intimate pains of an iron-willed woman. And still, at the dazzling summit of money and power, Barbra now faces a final chapter marked by what many call a silent tragedy at the age of 83. While the world gazes at $500 million with admiration behind the doors of her Malibu mansion, Barbra is bracing herself against psychological ghosts and an extreme isolation, the solitude of an artist who spent her entire life trying to please the public. Sadly, extreme wealth can sometimes turn her into easy prey for the cruelty of the digital age. In recent years, her family has repeatedly been shaken by toxic clickbait headlines and fabricated rumors claiming she was battling terminal cancer or that her son Jason was gravely ill. These hoaxes cut like knives into Barbra's already sensitive soul, pushing her further away from the outside world. This isolation does not come solely from a voluntary retreat to protect her privacy. It also grows out of a fear called dementia, memory decline. At 83, there are moments when she suddenly forgets small personal details, a vague terror that her brightest memories may slowly dissolve like smoke. She once reflected with painful clarity, "It's ironic that people remember every song I ever sang, while sometimes I lose my way in the corridors of my own past. This fear, combined with a stage panic that has never truly loosened its grip, has led her to almost disappear from public events, choosing a life more private than ever before. The most profound tragedy and the freshest wound came with the passing of Alan Bergman on the 17th of July, 2025, the man Barbra regarded as her spiritual father, who died at the age of 99 from natural respiratory causes. The news struck her like a blow to the heart. If a $500 million fortune can buy almost every form of art in the world, it stands utterly powerless before the cruelty of time. This loss did not only leave Barbra shattered, it slammed shut the final door connecting her to a golden era. Alan was not simply the lyricist behind her love songs, he was the keeper of fragments of her past soul. On Instagram, Barbra wrote, "Alan Bergman was not only a prolific lyricist, an incredible husband, father, and grandfather, he was family to me, a father figure. It cuts incredibly deep." She described herself as utterly devastated, and on what would have been his 100th birthday, she posted again, "Today would have been Alan Bergman's 100th birthday. We lost him a few months ago, but he and Marilyn are always in my thoughts. Happy heavenly birthday, Alan." Those words were more than tributes. They were a quiet cry for a piece of her spiritual family that had vanished. Since his passing, Barbra's stage fright has intensified. She rarely leaves her Malibu fortress, living among mementos and royalties that continue to flow in every day, without the old friend with whom she once shared tea and spoke about new melodies. That loneliness is so vast it casts a somber atmosphere over her home, making anyone who enters feel the weight of a tear-soaked legacy. It led her to declare that she would never again stand beneath the spotlight. Questions surrounding Barbra's immense will have become a topic of media curiosity, even though she has not officially made it public. With a complex real estate system and multiple charitable funds under the Streisand Foundation, the division of her assets will undoubtedly be an emotionally charged equation for those who remain. For her son, Jason Gould, and her husband, James Brolin, that fortune is not just money. When they look at the portfolio, they see an entire life of tragedy carried by a woman named Barbra. They cry not from fear of material uncertainty, but because every inch of Malibu land, every song royalty, bears the imprint of a woman who had to fight insecurity, fear, and a mother's emotional coldness to reach this day. The legacy Barbra Streisand leaves to future generations stands as one of the most powerful testaments to the intersection of ultimate glory and profound tragedy. At 83, standing on the boundary between life and reflection on the true value of existence, she understands that money can build an empire, but only love and tears can write a legend. Her family, looking back on this extraordinary journey filled with pain, cannot help but feel moved by the resilience of a small soul from Brooklyn who changed the world. The $510 million will one day be passed on. The mansions will find new owners, but the tears shed by her family over her journey will remain an inseparable part of the Streisand legacy. In the end, as the stage lights of life slowly dim, she will be remembered not only as a music billionaire, but as a woman who transformed every wound into art, leaving behind a vast inheritance built from a lifetime of tears and triumph. And so, the journey of Barbra Streisand comes to a close in lines filled with reflection and emotion. By 2026, Barbra Streisand is still alive, still contemplating what truly matters: love, family, and the peace that money cannot buy. The tears of her family and of those who love her do not fall because of wealth or poverty. They fall for a life that was intensely real, profoundly full, and at times unbearably heavy. Her legacy does not live in numbers, but in the way she reminds us that anyone can step out of the darkness, even with a trembling voice. If Barbra Streisand's story made you pause, or even shed a tear for a life marked by both tragedy and glory, I sincerely thank you for staying until the end. Videos like this do more than tell stories. They invite us to reflect together on life itself, To remember that behind every halo of fame lie silent pains, and behind great success come losses that make our hearts ache. If this video touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and comment below right now. What do you think makes Barbra Streisand's journey truly special? Her talent, her strength in overcoming tragedy, or the way she continues to give after enduring so much loss? I will read and respond to every comment. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss future videos. Share this video with friends, family, or anyone you believe needs to hear an inspiring and reflective story. Sometimes, a single click of sharing can help someone feel a little less alone while facing their own pain. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this long video. I hope it brought you a bit of warmth, a bit of motivation, and a touch of emotion from Barbra's story into your day. See you again in the next video. I wish you a truly peaceful and meaningful day. If you want me to tell the story of someone else next, leave a suggestion in the comments below. I am always listening.